Alright, I wanted to go ahead and explain WeChorus. First and foremost, I want to do a bit of a disclaimer that it's a pretty hard to use, but very, very helpful add-on. It has a low memory footprint, it can track a lot of things and make life easier for a lot of classes. However, a lot of the setup is trial and error, so I will probably make a few mistakes and have to fix them during the recording of this. Hopefully not, but I want to show some examples of how I use it and just sort of some examples of how you can set things up. So first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate what WeChorus is and how it helps me out. So first and foremost, a little bit of background about this class. So Restro Druids have something called Harmony. It's pretty much kind of like a, Enrage for a warrior. As long as it's active, I gain my mastery and increased healing. So it's pretty much to my benefit to always have it going. So it's one of the most important buffs that I have to maintain uptime on. However, the default behavior in World of Warcraft is you just get the little buff icon in the top right corner, right? And that's not terribly helpful. You can see it, but when you're kind of raiding and you're, healing hardcore and everything's really crazy, you're never going to notice that, right? And while some interface add-ons, such as LVUI, those things will have like their own built-in buff timers and things like that. There's not a lot of customization behind them, and you can't really make them amazingly noticeable. I mean, you can, but it just groups all of them together. Whereas this allows some really cool and intense customization of the look and feel of everything. So you'll notice first and foremost that little red icon in the bottom right corner of my screen. Well, not quite bottom, but right side. That is the icon for my Harmony buff. That red means that I don't have it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and start doing some heals, and you'll start to see things start to appear and operate as things happen. You might even hear some sound effects used to sort of indicate when things appear and disappear, such as Harmony. You're going to get an air horn if it falls off. When Life Bloom falls off, you might hear a sound. When Wild Mushroom falls off, you might hear a sound. When Swiftmend appears, you might hear a sound, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to just start casting things, and you'll sort of see what appears. Some things will have progress bars, some things will expand dynamically. You get to see target names, all this sort of stuff. So, you can sort of see here that I have several things, happening. We can see my Life Bloom uptime, we can see my rejuvenations, we can see when Swiftmend is available, we can see Harmony and how much is left, and you can, see when other stuff falls off, like in that case that was a Life Bloom that was falling off, if I remember correctly. You're going to hear things like when, clear casting is available, and if we let our Harmony fall off, in this case, we'll hear that air horn, which indicates that my Harmony's fallen off. All of this stuff is to help me when I'm doing mechanics and I'm tunnel visioned on, the unit frames or whatever else while healing. It helps me make sure that I don't miss one of these important things, because I need to really carefully manage them all to be up for as long as possible. So that's an example of how you can use it. If you're a DPSer, you can manage your dots on your various targets. You can manage cooldowns and other abilities when they appear. You can manage when the stars align. There was actually one I helped somebody set up where basically it looked for if the target was in execute phase, they had Enrage currently active, and their weapon enchant had procced. Then the icon would appear. And just very specific details like that. So, I'm going to go ahead and start taking you through the interface and showing you sort of how this all works, but note that this is a very much a learning process. You can make some incredible things. This Ecora right here, this is an example of one that manages the legendary rings for DPS healing tanks. When you activate one, you can see here the icon will light up because it's active. You'll see how long till it ticks. You'll see who casted it and the cooldown remaining. There's one example, right? Those types of things can be extremely helpful for your raid, or just if you're curious of things, or if, in these cases for the add-ons or the WeChorus I have here, very helpful for just being more effective at my class. So he opened the interface with /WA, and one thing you can do right off the bat is import somebody else's. So any of these, such as this group, I can actually right-click and export to string, and then if somebody else has WeChorus, they can take that, and they can go to New, Import, paste it in. They'll just have a little icon appear with an import button. You can click it, and bam, you have the same one. Also, you can add things to groups to make them easier to move around. So like I have this Resto Druid utility group which has all these things in it, but I can actually do things such as, if we can put others into their own groups. I don't think you can do groups within a group. I've actually... Yeah, you can't. So pretty much there are certain types that you can't put in a bigger group, but the advantage of a group is I was able to bundle in Harmony, Soul of the Forest, Swiftmen, Clearcasting, and I can export that entire group as a string rather than it one by one. So that's something that's really nice for when you're sharing them. And then you can manage positioning easier and all that other stuff. But yeah, so let's go ahead and look into one and how these are set up. So we'll go ahead and take the example here of one of the ones I just more recently made, which is Rejuvenation. Okay, so Rejuvenation, if you saw it, it was pretty much the one where when I was casting, I need to move that little tooltip bar. Let me actually do that. Let's see, I think it's Tip-Tac. Yep, that's the one. Alright, so we should be able to move these around. Yep, there we go. Move that up there. Actually, no, we're going to move it even a little bit above that because that can expand pretty far. That should be fine, right? Let's see. Is that going to be fine? That'll be fine. I'll deal with that later, though. Just want to get out of the way here for demonstration purposes. Alright, so pretty much you'll see, this is the one that if I cast Rejuve, and if I cast on another target, and then another target, we can see the target's name, how long is left, all that other fun stuff. So we go ahead and go into, by the way, this is my Bloodlust up here at the top. Is pretty awesome. So we're going to go ahead and go into this Rejuvenation, and we'll sort of take a look at how it's set up. So when you're setting up ones that are designed for multiple targets, let's actually just take this from the top, honestly, rather than showing the settings. I think it might be easier that way. So we'll go and create a new one. So this case, this is a progress bar. You can do many types. You can do icons, you can do progress bars, you can do ones that show models from game files, which is what that Bloodlust one was doing. You can show, very other one. These can get pretty complicated. Progress textures and textures are pretty bad. I wouldn't use them. So pretty much stick to progress bar, icon, maybe text, and then some of these others use at your own risk. But in this case, we'll go ahead and do a progress bar. Progress bars are kind of just set up like that by default. By default, it has an icon next to it, which was the spell's icon you select. An automatic icon is usually what it does as well, so auto. It'll just look for the spell ability. So let's go ahead and change the bar to one that looks a little better. There we go. We're going to go ahead and scroll to the bottom here, and this is where you can adjust things like the height and width. So we're going to make it a little bit larger just so we can see it easier. Let's do that. You can do things like adjusting the colors. So for example here, if we go to the bar color settings, red is the bad thing that's happening. So let's go ahead and make red the actual background color, and then the bar itself green. That way you can see the red, the bad, running out of the buff, coming onto the good, that sort of thing. The name, by default, %n is whatever it is you cast it at. Otherwise, if there is no target and it's cast, it'll just default to whatever that you name it over here. On the left side there. So we're pretty much done with this, right? We don't really need to set much else. You can turn off the icon if you want. You can, customize where it is. You can even do things like make them so they're oriented differently or grow top to bottom. These are things that you're just going to have to experiment around with and mess with in your own time, because this add-on is enormous. So the important thing about what we're doing here isn't really the look of it, right? The look of it's really nice and how it's displayed, but we need it to actually track the ability. So let's go ahead and go to trigger. So triggers work pretty cool. So by default, there's one trigger already added. If you add a second trigger, you can make it require all at once, like I did for that one execution buff that I mentioned, or you can make it go any, so you can have the same weak aura get triggered off of multiple things happening, which could be useful for certain scenarios, maybe for certain attacks or things like that, but for my purposes, it's not very useful. The other thing to note is what you use for the type. This is the part that causes the most problems for people, and takes a lot of experimentation. One thing I've noticed and learned is that aura is anything that appears up here in this top bar, whether it's a buff, a debuff, anything, and anything that appears up here is an aura. So that's what you use when you're going to track things like, a buff, like Mark of the Wild, or this right here, Sign of the Emissary, where you can make those things appear. But ironically, look at Rejuve. When I cast Rejuve or Life Bloom, they appear up there. So those are auras. So what you do is with aura selected, we can then, don't check this off, by the way, you can then type in the name of whatever it is you want. So in this case, it's Rejuvenation. Let's do that. Sweet, and we click OK. It finds 33 matches. Well, that's no good. There's 33 different rejuvenations. How do we get the one we want? Well, it doesn't matter, because we can actually filter it to make sure it's ours, and there's an easy way to do that. You just check off at the bottom here, only magic auras cast by the player, which sort of is what you're going to want for every circumstance, whether you're managing buffs, debuffs, well, maybe not debuffs, because that's cast by others, but like if you were putting dots on an enemy, for example, you want the ones casted by you, because what if there's another warlock in the group? That's not going to be terribly helpful, right? Alright, so let's go ahead and check this out then. And by the way, this is fantastic for balanced druids, because Moonfire, things like that for multi-dotting also can be helpful too. Obviously it's just as useful for warlocks and those things too, but anything that has a lot of multi-dotting going on. So we go and check off own only to make sure it's ours. Alright, and then, now that we have that going, are we done? Well, pretty much actually in this case. This right here though, is something very much important that you need to pay attention to. This is referring to when it's going to display this. It needs to be on the unit player, which is me. So if I rejuve any of these other targets, it won't work, and I'll demonstrate that real quick. Rejuve on me, here it works, right? Rejuve on this target, nothing's working, right? We don't see it. And that's because it's only going to track it if it's on player. So what if we do target? Okay, let's do target. That sounds more like it. Okay, let's click on me. There we go. Oh, that's great. Now I'm going to click on him. Oh wait, what? What's happening? It's like it's changing it for each. Well, that's because target implies your current target, so it's only going to show the status of whatever it is that's currently selected. So what do? How do we track it across all of the targets? Because that's obviously what we need it here for. Well, how you do that is multi-target. Now, when I click multi-target, something interesting is going to happen. It's going to ask me if I want to create a dynamic group, and I want to click yes, but it's going to break my weak aura in the process. So the dynamic group is created, and this dynamic group is basically allows you to dynamically create new instances of your weak aura and stack them or orient them however you want as you cast them. So it's automatically created. However, if I go back to my weak aura, the aura name's gone. So always make sure when you select multi-target, you go back in and you reselect what it is that you want for the spell. There you go. So now, I'm going to move this over here. Now, if I cast a Rejuve, and I cast it on him, and on him, it all is there, and it all dynamically grows. Now, within that, you can go to the group, which is the top one, and you can change what direction they grow, where they align, all those sorts of things, add borders, separate them from each other, etc., etc., all those other great options. You do the same thing with dots. So in this case, you'd have multi-target set up, but you'd select different options for your actual weak aura, which is the sub. If you look here, it's the sub one. So we're going to go into trigger. What if we wanted it to be like a warlock curse? So let's do Curse of Agony. Okay, Curse of Agony. But we want it to be a debuff, right? That way it knows. So it's looking in the right area. So it's not looking for a buff called that. There you go. This would work as is. Now, where it starts to get really complicated is when you start wanting to trigger things that are like, is this ability usable? Is this trinket usable? You know, I want this to appear when there's 3 seconds left before it's off cooldown. So let's take that as an example then. So let's look at Wild Growth. I want to make sure that I don't burn my Soul of the Forest if there is less than 3 seconds left till Wild Growth is ready. Or let's do less than 2. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this new group here real quick. Delete, and we'll go ahead and create a new one. So in this case, I want to show an icon. This icon will appear, and it will basically be the purpose of it to be a big old, like, stop, 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 you're gonna, you know, screw something up type thing. We'll do a custom icon. This way we can make sure it's what we want. In this case, we'll maybe do like, what do we want to call it? What do we want to do for this one? We'll just do the Wild Growth icon. We might as well. We probably could do automatic icon, but I'm not going to bother. The text we're going to do custom text. Don't cast Rejuve. Sure, why not? Bam. We're going to make that text pretty large. We're going to go ahead and make it stay inside. We're going to center it. We'll go ahead and... what do we want to do? We'll actually put a color overlay. There we go. Don't cast Rejuve in red. That looks eye-catching. And we'll change the font to adventure. No, I'm not actually going to use this, by the way. I'm just using this as an example. Great, icon's how we want it. Well, the important part, of course, is the trigger. How do we make this work the way we want it to? So in this case, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for the cooldown of an ability. Now, cooldowns are obviously not an aura. What are cooldowns? Okay, well, let's look. This might take a couple of tries. It's been a while since I've created one this way. So let's look here. We have cooldown progress item, cooldown progress spell. Okay, that's not necessarily what we want. Maybe action usable. Okay, so let's try action usable, right? Assuming that it means we can use wild growth, then obviously it's off cooldown. So let's try that. Well, actually, right away spotted a problem. Okay, we can't see if there's amount of time left on it, so it's not actually caring about a cooldown. Okay, so let's try something else then. Well, let's look here. I'm not really seeing anything. Cooldown progress looks like it's not quite what I would want, so let's try event. There we go, cooldown ready spell. Okay. Is this what I want? Cooldown ready spell. Hide timed. Doesn't seem actually what I want either. Status, cooldown progress spell. There you go, cooldown progress. Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, and then I guess that makes sense because we want to know when there's X amount left on the cooldown. Alright, let's try this. Like I said, it could take a bunch of trial and error to sort of figure out what it is exactly you're looking for. So wild growth is of course the name of the spell. So we found it, great. Alright, and we're going to say when there is less than, okay, less than 3 seconds left is when we want it to appear. And we want it to show, I guess, on cooldown? Sure. This might work. Let's try it. Okay. We're going to go and cast Wild Growth. And when there's less than 3 seconds left, let's see if it appears. Hey, there it goes. It actually worked on the first try. Beautiful. Okay, and then you notice it disappears moments afterwards. Now, pretty much how you'd have to track this is if you basically do action usable, and you create a second one, so when the action's usable, it would always appear there. And this is actually similar to how I had to set it up for my Swiftman, for example, to make sure that it would appear and then stay there, rather than, of course, as soon as it's off cooldown, it's no longer tracking cooldown progress because the cooldown's done. So this is pretty much kind of a basic overview of how this works. Again, you can track all sorts of really useful things. You can do things like tracking your buffs, or your buffs up. You can make sure as a rogue you never forget your poisons, because it'll block half the screen with your poisons icon. Or you won't have you forget your water elemental, because same thing. Or lightning shield on a shaman, something that never gets in the way unless there's a critical problem with what you're doing. And you can do this for lots of things like, I'm missing my Mark of the Wild buff, or, I'm, have certain items like my legendary ring is not equipped, those sorts of things. And those can be great ways to make sure that you are always sort of set up and optimal with everything. You can track your enrage up times, you can track, how long till your enrage is going to fall off, similar to how long till my harmony falls off. You can track abilities and trinkets and items in your inventory. All of these sorts of things can be done, as well as some really cool ones. There are some pretty unique things. I actually have one for Hellfire Citadel. It's actually pretty enormous, but I'll show it real quick here. I have in here one for Hellfire Citadel. Look how many different groups there are in that. Every single fight, there has been custom ones created to show me when I have Unstable Orb, or when I'm the one rooted, or when I have, on Manaroth, I have, the thing that pushes me back, Shadow Force. All these different things. Almost like it's like a mini Deadly Boss mods built into Weak Auras. And I got this by having it get shared to me with the text string. You can do some amazing things, but the best part is lots of people have done those amazing things for you. So checking out Icy Veins, or the WoW forums, or Reddit, or MMO Champion for strings for your class that are helpful is a great way to get you started until you have a better understanding of how Weak Auras works and what sorts of things you want to create and track for yourself. It can be pretty overwhelming. It is a beast of an application, or of an add-on, I should say, but it is worth every second of pain to be able to optimize your class on a level that just makes playing so much easier. Blizzard has done a lot to a lot of classes to make them very reliant on uptimes. Feral Druids, if they don't keep their Savage Roar up, I think it's called Savage Roar, they drop like 30% of their damage. Just straight drop. That's how big of an important it is, you know. And that's the same way for a lot of classes. You know, what do you want? Something that tells you when you have 5 combo points, makes it nice and noticeable. You can track that, and you can show some enormous ass icon saying to use whatever ability. You know, you could even go so far as to program based on tracking cooldowns, how long things have left, combined with triggers based on your resources, how much mana or how much focus or whatever you have. You could do something that would just tell you your rotation actively as you played, tell you your optimal rotation. You know, hunters have to Chimera Shot on cooldown. The moment it's off cooldown, they need to be using it. So you can have something that tells you when there's less than 2 seconds left to stop casting anything else to make sure you have enough focus to be able to cast Chimera Shot when the time comes. Those types of things. It's insane. It's crazy. Use it. Download it. It's a small memory footprint. It won't actually lag your game if you're somebody who uses no add-ons, and it can provide such an amazing improvement in performance. Hopefully this has been helpful. Obviously, if you're in my guild, whisper me in game if you have questions. If you've made it this far through the video, congratulations. Hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully you can get some help out of this. And thank you for listening to me ramble for this long. Again, hopefully it's useful. You can download it from curse.com. It's just the Weak Horrors 2 is I think the one that's out, and it's all cross-compatible and all that fun stuff. So yeah, happy raiding and PvPing and whatever it is you're going to use this for. Thanks.